Good looking, check. Estranged parent, check. Disassociation, check. Today we will be discussing the recruiter from Squid Games and what makes a sociopath. All right, welcome back to another episode of Haire. We are talking about sociopathy. Is that how you say it? We're going to be talking about it today. I am toying with the idea of doing just a separate playlist just for all of the psychological aspects and media, and trying to see if I can just have a separate playlist. I know we had disorders of social media, which thank you guys so much for the views on that. But I definitely am toying with just having a separate playlist, especially as more issues pop up. So if you guys are not familiar with my channel, we talk about everything here, including psychology. So we are going to be talking about the recruiter. So let's talk about the definition of a sociopath first. So first definition is someone who lacks empathy. They're antisocial. They have periods of rage and aggression that comes out. This is often there's often a comorbidity with dissociative disorder. Dissociative disorder is when emotionally you're basically turning everything off. Like, you ever have it where you have an out-of-body experience where you're driving your car home, you're just like, how did I get home? Okay, so think of disassociation. Can't get more serious. Think of disassociation in the same aspect as the fact that your body is going through the motions, but you don't have any emotional ties to it. So I have on here too, let's talk about the signs and detection of it as well. It's just that it's mostly impulse. So we'll go into a little bit more later with the recruiter for Squid Games, but definitely the impulse is what makes the difference between them. It's very easy to confuse this with someone who's a psychopath versus someone who's a sociopath. So when I think of the difference, and what I basically learned when I got my degree was the fact that sociopaths are more social, okay? And then you want to think of psychopath as someone who is more methodical and they're going after a specific person. Think of psychopath, they're going after a specific person, and think of sociopath as someone who's going after a group of people, okay? So I have examples here as Ted Bundy, Charles Manson. These are people who basically led almost, can I say these words? They led a lot of people to not be here anymore, okay? And the purpose of a sociopath is to lead a group of people into what they deem in their mind as justice, okay? So someone like Ted Bundy, who clearly, with all his victims, there's plenty of periods where he has rage and aggression. Another fun fact that I found out just today, which I was like, I didn't teach me this when I got my degree, but another fun fact that I found about people who are sociopaths is the fact that they have a tendency to have at least one emotional attachment to someone, which I thought that was kind of odd, that you can have lack of empathy but have a social attachment. Most of the times when they do, which I researched further, most of the times when a sociopath has a emotional connection to someone, it's often either not reciprocated or not made aware of, because there's been plenty of times where someone who's a sociopath will be like, oh, well, I always was attached to my aunt and they've never spoken to them a word in their life. So it's more, to me, more of the concept of attachment, not actually providing that emotional connection, which goes back to, them having that lack of empathy. When they say antisocial, I know it's like, I guess there's a lot of comorbidity there with them being antisocial, but also being where they want to socialize so they can show that their version of justice, right? So with them being antisocial, what they mean by that is that when they socialize, there is an intent behind it. It's not like, okay, well, I'm going to hang out with my friends today and like, we're going to do nothing. There's no goal there. Like, someone who has sociopathy is someone who has a result in their head of how they want things to go as a form of control, which, a lot of these personality disorders, all of it is based in control. A lot of people always confuse that as for attention. Yes, there's some times where there's attention that's more of a serial delifer. They have a need to have attention towards them. That's why they want to show you a signature, but they're more likely to have a socio aspect of it. So we're going to go into Mr. Dakji. So Mr. Dakji is someone who's 6 feet tall, good looking. He's the perfect sociopath. I know it sounds weird. I didn't mean to laugh. That's just my demeanor. I have a pleasant demeanor, but like, Mr. Dakji is up. Like, the Dakji is the game of like slaps or whatever from Squid Games that they use to determine whether or not you're going to get the special card to go participate in Squid Games. But his origin story that they revealed more is, you got to watch season 2 of Squid Games. His origin story as well was very much, I remember when he was telling his origin story, I was like, everything's adding. So basically, the way he started was that he was an incinerator. My R's are not strong, y'all. Incinerator, basically someone who would take care of the people who were alive during the games, right? So basically, at one point, he starts to disassociate. Like I said, the comorbidity with sociopathy. He started to dissociate to where, like, he sees humans as useless. He sees them as like, you're just cleaning up trash off the floor. You're just cleaning up trash off the floor. You're putting in a trash can. These people aren't real. And he says that he was promoted, like before, like the way he was promoted to the recruiter, the position he's in, is that at one point it came to him and his dad, and he chose himself and ended up de-lifing his dad, which, like I said, that emotional connection, that detachment starts very young, but it can always happen later in life. So that's how he got promoted to recruiter, and how he doesn't see people as real. And that's his origin story. It makes so much sense why he has this almost chaotic way of going about it. Like, even when he does the slaps, like, with the card game, the slaps, like, there's nothing there. There's no emotion there. Okay, and then so we're gonna go into just a little bit. We're gonna go into the cognitive map behind a sociopath, especially one like Mr. Dakji, Mr. Recruiter. We're gonna call him that. The cognitive map is that they need affirmation for what they deem as right and wrong. So what I mean by that is the fact that like, for example, the episode Bread or Lottery, right? So in this experiment, like I said, in his head, in this experiment, he has it where you can either choose the option of having a sandwich or bread, or you can choose like a lottery ticket. So he goes to like a heavily populated homeless section of the city, and he goes there. He's dressed in a nice suit. That's very important to keep that appearance, to keep that control. I noticed that his suit was very pressed, very clean, very to detail. His hair is perfectly combed. That's going to be very important. Very combed, very moosed down, very much perfect, right? So he goes there dressed. He has his bag. He goes up to a person. He gives them a coin. This is also important as well. He gives them a coin, and to each person he gives them a coin, and he gives them a coin who chooses a lottery ticket. So after they scratch the scratch off, they lose, he asks for the coin back, and then he takes the bread with him. Okay, so he does that over and over again. Methodically, he goes throughout the entire, like I said, whoever wrote this script, there was a psychologist on hand, because of the fact that he goes to each person. And offers this. He goes to each person. That is, I can say that for certain, is the fact that this is someone who has a disorder. It's just that, with OCD, a very popular disorder, you guys like to throw out that no one has OCD. OCD is a very small population of people, okay? But the fact that he has to go to each person, I watched the episode, I was like, he went to each person out there. That's someone who has a psychological disorder. Because someone who's just doing this just to play would have just like, okay, well, I'm going to do this to one person and do this to the next person, and I'm going to go. He had to make sure he went, okay? He had to make sure he went to each person, not missing one speck, that level of control. So after realizing that only 2 people actually chose the sandwich, he goes and he proceeds to, of course, he asks for the coin back, basically saying that I'm not giving you any charity, okay? He doesn't see you as a real person. He wouldn't even release, like I said, that coin wouldn't cost him anything. I know a Tom Ford suit, when I see one, I don't know why, it's literally a quarter that he couldn't just at least gave to them. Like, that just shows that he doesn't see them as worthy even to get a quarter from him. So basically, afterward, he proceeds to maniacally proceeds to get all the bread that he bought and stomped on all of it. Just stomped on all of it. and like his hair is becoming undone. Basically the control, like the true sociopath inside is coming out, and his hair is coming undone, everything. And so after that, he proceeds to just walk off. He still has his briefcase, like that control. He walks off and just leaves it and makes sure. And then this is another thing too that shows his cognitive map, is that he makes sure that all the breads are completely crumbled. Because to me, when I first saw it, I thought that he was going to get the bag of breads and just throw it on the floor and all the breads were just going to go away, right? But he literally made sure he destroyed it at the bottom of his heel, okay? Do you know how much force you have to put to break bread? Literally break bread. I'm not saying go try it. I told you I need to save money in 2024, but like, have you ever tried to actually break bread with your heel? It's almost impossible because it's bread, but basically afterwards, he basically walks off, and it just shows like that mindset. Like that was a perfect, like that to me, there's a psychologist on hand. I don't care. You guys can argue with me if you want to. I know there's a psychologist on hand because I've never seen such accuracy, like from the control of his hair being like undone afterwards, and him making sure that he goes to each person and he stomped on each piece of bread. It wasn't like he stomped on one and walked off like a regular person would go. He literally went to each bread. He went to each bread and made sure each of the breads were like stomped on, like he wanted to make sure they were all taken away. So basically, after the fact, it just shows to me his cognitive map. Like he and his mindset and his version of justice is that he thinks that people who are beneath him, literally like the bread was, people who are beneath him, like they're like, humanity is flawed, humanity is flawed, humanity is disturbed, and he is here to hand out justice, right? So it was just beautiful. Like not really to those people, because that was not nice. I'm not saying that, but like from a psychological standpoint, like to me, it was beautiful. It was beautiful because I was like, you hit everything. I was like, we learned about this in class, but like another aspect as well is that, so later on in the episode, oh yeah, spoiler alert if you haven't watched it yet. Later on in the episode, what ends up happening is that the recruiter meets the main character, Song, and basically play a game of Russian roulette, and to even the playing field, like they both go and, do it back and forth. And then, before he delives himself, before the recruiter delives himself, can I say that, YouTube? Okay. Before he does that, he ends up he knows that it's going to happen to him. Right. So they're counting back and forth. There's only six, I want to say there's 6 or 7 and like a rotary gun, one of those rotary guns. So there's only six chambers and there's one bullet, right? So I know he's counting in his head of like, okay, what possible algorithm that they could go back and forth with, right? So, there's a moment there, which I can see it pass through his eyes. He's a phenomenal actor, by the way. But there's a piece there that I can see that pass through his eyes, that he knows this is going to be his last day. It's going to be his last day, right? So he sees someone like see like Mr. Song. I don't say using his government name, Gong Yu. The recruiter sees the main character, Mr. Song, as someone who's beneath him. So he's like, I can't let you know that you won. Does that make any sense? Because he could have easily just got the rotary gun and just dipped out of there, but he didn't. He was like, I have to prove that these people who are underneath me, I have to prove that I'm better than them. So knowing that, he ends up delifing himself, and that really showed that like a lot of these people who have these cognitive disorders, they rather not be here anymore than actually have their mindset challenged or proved wrong. Like that's why you'll see a lot of times when narcissists, who are the most famous people who have psychological disorders, you'll see a lot of times when you try to confront a narcissist, it never goes well, because their mindset, like, how like if you're just like, hey Claire, I can't hear you, can you change that? I'm gonna be a little confused on what you're saying at first, but if you give me an example, I'll go ahead and fix it, right? This is a regular person's mindset. Someone with a psychological disorder, their mindset is all they have. Like I said, those developmental years between 5 and 8, something tragic happened, and that's the only thing that was secure. That was their constant. So a lot of the times you'll see where it's very hard to get them to change their mind. So he ended up delifing himself instead of confronting that. So we're going to talk about fact versus fiction. So let's give it a little Latin cover right quick. So sociopath. Did you know socio is from the Latin root word fellow or companion or comrade? So I thought this was really interesting because a lot of people think of the word, I was like, okay, it's your fellow's path, sociopath, but it really shows, like I said, so you can be able to determine the difference between the two, is the fact that someone who is a sociopath versus someone who's a psychopath, the biggest difference will always be the fact that there is a mindset that's actually going into the mindset of who is going to be the victim of their actions. Sociopath, a group of people. Psychopath, one person. Okay, they're after one person. Okay, so that's why. And then, of course, a serial delifer is someone who is basically a narcissist that wants you to try to guess where they're gonna attack next. Okay, and I would say out of the three of them, I can say the one who's the most dangerous one is a psychopath, because at least with a sociopath, there's a higher chance of you catching them. Serial killer, there's a higher chance of you catching them because they're serial delifer. There's a higher chances of you catching them because there's a pattern. Okay, like for example, now that we know with Mr. Deducci, now we know that you have a tendency to buy a lot of bread or whatever. We're gonna just start checking whatever games. Like for example, I wouldn't be surprised if he went to. If I was tracking Mr. Deducci to see what he's gonna do next. Maybe he'll go to, maybe I could see him going to somewhere not nice and basically having one check of money and see what they would do to fight to get that, just so he can prove that his mindset that humanity is flawed. So that's where, if I was tracking him, not saying I'm a tracker, but if I was tracking him, that would be the next spot. I also put on here too is that there isn't enough empirical data to really show what makes a sociopath. Like you can, there's, like I said, I showed you the signs of detection there, but there's not really enough empirical data because, like I said, because a lot of the times, a lot of these socio and psychopaths are very, very charismatic. So it's very easy to get distracted by that charisma and not really get to the root of the study. So there's not as much empirical data. Of course, the APA is going to come from me and be like, we studied. I was like, not enough, because they keep evading capture. Okay. Because think about Mr. Deducci. Honestly, he would have just kept going on doing that. They spent 2 years. They spent 2 years looking for him and they couldn't find him. It was literally a game of chance that they found him. Okay. I also have on here is why psychology is important. There's a lot of armchair psychologists on the internet. I really hate the fact that y'all learn the word narcissist. I really hate that, because now it's like, oh, when you went to Wendy's, you only got one sandwich. You're such a narcissist. No, no. Or when someone does something 3 times, like, oh, I have OCD. I was like, no, you don't. No, you don't. I've seen a victim pretty much of OCD, and they have to make sure they blink exactly the same amount of times. They have to swallow the same amount of times. Their hair has to be even. It can't be asymmetrical. They have to go to sleep exactly at it. You don't understand. It is, they're pretty much in slavery, okay, to their disorder. So I can definitely say true psychology, if you want to actually open a book and read it, true psychology is very, very fascinating. I will still stand by my degree at all times, because learning human behavior has helped me maneuver through life on easy mode pretty much, because I would say within 10 minutes sometimes meet a person and see what time it is. Does that make any sense? How to address this person, can you play with this person? Can you do you have to be more serious? Do you have to be more formal with this person? what type of background they have, like what type of triggers they have, I can usually tell within 10 to 15 minutes. That's not from my degree per se, but just from living life, just truly being a people watcher. But definitely for sure, psychology is very important. I feel like it needs to be a minimum requirement before you leave the house. Leave your parents' house, you need to take a psychology class. But definitely any other topics any other situations where you feel like psychology was at the forefront, definitely let me know. I would love to do a video on it. I am so excited for 2025 and what we will be doing together. Don't forget to subscribe, share. It's gonna be